Hey there. Welcome to episode 18 of the Boob Report podcast, powered by Helix Interactive. Today, I'm hanging out with Deb Creer, unabashed connector with information, knowledge, and resources to help people become more successful in business and in life. Let's get started. Okay, yay. So excited to have my friend Deb here. Good morning, my beautiful, beautiful friend.
Good morning. This is so much fun. We're going to have such a great time talking about a serious subject, but you got to have fun with it.
Exactly. That's what I tell my friends. I'm like, if you don't laugh about something like this, if you can't try and find the humor somewhere, all you're going to do is cry. So, so let's find the humor. So, all right, for those vast audience members, tongue in cheek, that we were discussing earlier, let's let you introduce yourself and we'll just riff it. We're just going through this.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I am Deb Creer. I'm formerly from Colorado, and so that is how I know the lovely and talented Michelle. Live in Atlanta now. We've been here about 10 years. I have my own marketing and PR firm, which, makes it nice that you have your own PR firm or your own company when you have to go through some of these issues, shall we say. But about 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And, we'll obviously talk about it much more in detail. And I distinctly remember looking at the doctor after I got, the diagnosis, after you've done that, you got to come back and do a no mammogram and yada, yada, yada. And I said, I'm sorry, this is not in my schedule. And part of in my background also, I worked for an oncologist and I worked for the American Cancer Society. So I tell people I know just enough about this to really be dangerous. But that has also helped me through this process, because I'll say, wait, and be able to ask those questions. But yeah, it's been a journey, because I am the poster child for if it could go wrong, it did, and still kind of continues that way. But as you said, you just laugh and you go on.
Right. Well, and I think you saying that, it makes me think of that meme that I've seen on Facebook. If something about lifting a Buick, if the hard times are meant to make you stronger, I could lift a Buick right now.
Right. Yeah. But, somebody told me I could lift 2 Buicks.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking you could lift a tank, actually.
Probably.
With everything you've been through. But I love your resilience. And I know, because we're 6 years out for you.
6 years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Because you had it the year before I got diagnosed.
Right.
Because I remember, dealing with all of the information and all of that, you kept popping in my head when I got my diagnosis as well. And it was quite the journey for you.
Well, and it's always tricky for me, because I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about this, because I think, that is one of the things we need to do, is we have to have conversations about this. But because I had so many complications, it's scary for people, to talk to me. And I always have to do the big disclaimer, hey, what happened to me is less than 1% of people, you won't be like this, all of those various things. But, it has been a journey. But as I said, I am more than happy to talk with people about it, because it's so scary. I mean, you get that, you even hear the word cancer and your brain goes,
yeah.
And so sometimes just talking with somebody who's been through it and can say, hey, be sure to ask about this, or, have you thought about that, and things like that. And I have people who say, I have friends who've been diagnosed. What do I do? And so I'm, it'll be a journey that you and I are on literally for the rest of our lives.
Right. It's, I think that going back to what you said about, I don't have time for this. I don't know. This is not going to work. I have a business to run. I very fortunately had my husband, as I always refer to, my Prince Charming, who took over my part of the business that we own together, the marketing agency. And I don't know what I would have done without him, because same thing. When I went in to see my surgeon, when we were scheduling my bilateral mastectomy, I'm flipping through my daytime daytimer, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work because my
Yeah.
daughter has this or my son
Uh-huh.
has this, and
Oh yeah.
I've got to do
Hmm.
this. She literally reached across the table, grabbed a hold of the daytimer,
Hmm.
pulled it towards her, and goes, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't care.
This now takes priority.
Yeah.
Hmm.
This is all you. This is all
Hmm.
you. So
Hmm.
yeah, well, walk us through, and we can go in depth as you want. I know you're an open book. You are an amazing, amazing woman. But one thing that I find interesting is
Hmm.
how many different types of cancer there are,
Hmm.
breast cancer
Oh
specifically.
yeah.
So if you don't mind letting it, sharing with
Sure.
us what
Yeah.
your
Hmm.
diagnosis was
Yep.
and how you went
Sure.
from there.
So, I went for my annual mammogram, just like, we're all trained to do. You go trotting down there and, take it. Doesn't, and I'm not even sure I got home. And I'm like 5 minutes from the hospital when they called and said, we need you to come back.
Ooh,
And so that was the first kind of uh-oh.
yeah.
And they try to do it without scaring the bejesus out of you.
Hmm.
But at the same point, you're thinking, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And it was clearly not a technical problem with their end. It
Mhm.
wasn't that, something didn't work. It was, we need to do this again.
Right.
And so I went back and they took the films, and then they contacted my primary care physician, who was one of the first people that I fired in all of this process. And that's one of the things that I tell people, if you are absolutely not 100% confident with your doctor, get rid of them.
Hmm.
And so he did not want to deal with this. And for whatever reason, I mean, it was just, and so he immediately referred me to a breast surgeon. I went and I met with this lovely doctor, and she said, well, yes, you do have, she said, there is an issue. And I love it. They always have a different voice, right, when they're talking about this. And she said, what you have is something called microcalcifications. Now, like I said, I had background in all of this, and I was like, the what's it? And she said, about a vast majority of women your age and over have these. It's just a process of hormones, aging, all those various things. And she said, but in a very small instance, they can be an issue. So she said, let's go a little bit further. And these literally were smaller than grains of salt. The computer that read the mammogram saw them. And so, and that was really why we wanted to do it twice, was we needed to make sure that it hadn't really just been specks of, dust, lint, whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah, these were teeny tiny. So of course, what do? I go to Dr. Google and I start looking up these things. And what happens when it becomes an issue is those little dots start gathering.
Hmm.
And then that's where you have a problem. And so, I'm at my doctor, and she said, yeah, it is. She said, but it's stage 0. Easy peasy. We're not going to have to do too much. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. And I did, I shed a couple tears and various things. I mean, there was that, but we did a couple biopsies, which were not fun. I had what was known as stereotactic biopsies.
Mm.
Oi, I ended up having to have a second one, and I said, y'all need to give me something to kind of make me a little loopy doopy, because I did not like it. I mean, there was pain involved, and
Right.
So those biopsies still kept coming back negative. We
Mhm.
knew there was an issue, but it was okay. This is still stage 0. So yeah, at this point, I hadn't talked to anybody else, hadn't talked to an oncologist, hadn't talked to anybody. And so she said, let's go in and just kind of, let's go in surgically now and see what we can find.
Mhm.
And so at that point, we go in, and this was one of those things where they had made an error on the chart. They had the wrong side. And I was like, no, excuse me, it's left. And they all went, really? I said, it's left. Well, of course, the world came to a screeching halt, because, they had to get new orders, all sorts of things. But anyhow, get in there and do all this stuff. Get back. I'm in recovery, and everybody has very serious face on. And I'm thinking, this is not good. And so they took the closest lymph node out and tested it, and it came back positive, and so that was the first thing. So then they tested and removed all of the other lymph nodes. And this was one of the things that I never really knew, was everybody has a different number of lymph nodes,
Mhm.
and so I only had 12.
Mhm.
And so they removed 12. 8 were positive. So that jumped me up on the chart really pretty fast. I mean, that took it to about a stage 3,
Right.
because that meant it had spread.
Mm-hmm.
So then we go and we talk to the oncologist, and she's not a happy camper that I had waited several months to do this, because, all sorts of things could have been happening. And so she said, we need to start chemo now, and we need to start big chemo. And she said, we'll talk about surgery later. She said, but we need to start this. So this was when we had the issue, and so she gives me this chemo, and this was a massive dose. This was 8 different drugs. And plus the other things that they give you, the Benadryl, all of those things.
Yeah.
About 10 hours worth of stuff. You're laying there bored to tears, right?
Right.
Watching TV, reading books as they're changing all this stuff out. And I did have a port by that point, and so it did make life much easier.
So just to interrupt,
we go through all this.
Was it just, I'm sorry, just to interrupt. Was it 10 hours straight, or did they divide that up?
No, it was 10 hours straight.
Oh my God.
I just camped out there. I discovered that Jimmy John's delivers lunch. So I did. I ordered lunch. I was like, okay. And I'd taken my little chemo bag that had my blanket, and it had a stuffed animal, and it had, all these various things in it. And that's one thing that I tell people: if you're going for something, go and nest. It's okay. And so, I remember I had my first dose like 2 days before Halloween. And then I went back and I had the injection of, I just drew a blank on it, that helps your immune system. Mm-hmm. So I got that. Halloween comes, goes, had a great time. I'm thinking, well, this is pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then Monday hit, and Halloween was on a Saturday. And so on Monday, I woke up and I thought, don't feel good, but I just had this massive dose of chemo. And so, I just kind of, and it was just kind of a little nauseated, a little things that you really do expect with chemo. Mm-hmm. On Tuesday, I told my husband, go to work. And then at about noon, I called and I said, I think you need to come back. I'm just not doing well, and I think you need to be here. Fine. That, and still we're just, this is just a nasty reaction to this big dose of chemo. And then in the middle of the night, it hit, and it hit bad. And I thought, this is not normal. So we end up calling an ambulance, early the next morning. Actually, we called the oncologist, and they said, you need an ambulance. Mm-hmm. And we live 5 minutes from the hospital. So, and primarily the ambulance was because I was in such intense pain, and that was the trigger. I knew there's nausea, there's all of that, but I had this abdominal pain that was just ungodly. And so the firemen came, that was fun. They got me down the stairs, and then they go carting me off in the ambulance. And I distinctly remember telling the ambulance driver, we stopped, and we live 5 minutes from the hospital. And I'm like, why are we stopping? And he said, well, it's a red light. And I went, you mean we're not doing lights and sirens? And that's the last thing I remember for hours. I crashed right then. And what had happened was one of the chemo drugs, and we're pretty sure we know which one, had eaten a hole through my colon. And then I got septic shock. And I think it's sepsis first, and then you get septic shock. Yeah. And so, so I'm at the hospital and in and out, and I mean, all sorts of things. My heart went wonkadoodle. I got very tachycardic. I was in shock, just in shock in general. I mean, I remember just laying there shaking because I was so cold, and all these various things, and then the doctors start their, that they do.
Yeah.
And I remember, now my husband says it happened a little different than I remember, but I remember the surgeon and the oncologist out in the hall basically arguing over how fast I was going to die. Because once you reach that point, they really can't do anything. And the oncologist was saying, you will treat her. Mm-hmm. And so they did, and went in and cleaned up the mess that things had caused. And then 7 weeks later, I was out of the hospital. I had multiple other complications. I mean, I spent lots of time in ICU. I had anything, like I said, anything and everything that could go wrong did. Mm-hmm. So finally got out. Then we decided, once I had healed from that, to do the double mastectomy, because at that point it was very clear I could not do more chemo.
Right.
And so did the double mastectomy, got a complication from that. I actually had a bleed. And so I looked down and there's basically a grapefruit on my shoulder. And I'm like, well, look, I grew a new boob, but it's not in the right spot. And so, off we go to the hospital again. The doctor had never seen that happen. And I'm like, well, hello, special person, so we go through all of this again. And there's just been things that have happened. But in amongst all of this, I did tell somebody, my rib hurts. And we weren't, it was like, whatever. And so we did a biopsy on it and it came back inconclusive, but possible, I think is how they worded it.
Okay.
And so that made it stage 4. So what I have is stage 4 metastatic breast cancer.
Okay.
And so the scary thing about that is it's not curable.
Yeah.
It's just, it kind of goes into hiding, but it's always there. And so my treatment has been different than what most people have. I'm what's known as triple positive. So positive for estrogen and then positive for HER2.
Okay.
And so I take an injection. I still have my lovely port, which anybody who is considering any of this, get a port. Hello. It's not really the most fun thing in the world, but it makes life much easier. So I have a treatment every 21 days of a drug called Kanjinti or Herceptin. There's, the same type of drug, 2 different companies.
Right.
And so I have that. It's a pretty, it slows me down for a day or two, nothing major. And then I am on an oral chemo that I will take for 10 years.
Okay.
And so we'll just kind of see what goes from there.
Right. So, I mean, basically, in a nutshell, you are just you have cancer. I mean, you're not ever going to go into,
there's not had, it's have.
It's have. So you'll never go into remission or anything like that. It is just something that you're going to live
it's
with.
just kind of there but not doing anything. I mean, like the last time something actually showed on a scan was in 2015.
Okay.
So, and that is I have lots of scans, lots of tests, all of those various things. And I mean, there's nothing that is showing up. So, knock on wood. Yeah. Everything is still going well.
I find that fascinating because I honestly, again, every day I learn something new about breast cancer and different types of cancer. When I was going through, getting my mammograms, the digital reading, the imaging and all of that, I was told that, we all have cancer cells in our bodies. We all do.
Yeah. It's just if they're doing something or not.
Exactly. Whether or not they set up base camp somewhere, and, but to know that it's going, it's something that you live with and you can manage it because they know it now. Again, that goes back to knowledge. I mean, it was such a difficult, I think agonizing at times, journey for you to get there, but at least they know what they're dealing with.
Yeah. And we know to keep watching for it.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggie.
Right. That is, I remember when how sick you were and how long you were in the hospital. I just, oh my gosh, that's just,
it was bizarre. I mean, and I don't remember an awful lot of it. I mean, I slept a lot, and part of that was the drugs, the infection. I mean, all of those various things, because then of course you develop other infections, when you're in there that long. And, and so, I mean, I had multiple complications. I mean, all told, I have had 21, I think, surgeries, because of all the complications. Like I had to have my port replaced. I mean, most people only have their port for a year or so. Well, I had my port, and danged if my dog, see, this is where these things happen. My dog jumped up and jumped on me and caught it just right and twisted it. Ow. Oh, ow, ow, ow.
Oh my God.
And so it meant that they weren't accessing it right, which, since it goes directly into your heart, they get a little overexcited about that.
Right.
And so when I had it replaced, normally it just goes into a vein in your shoulder. Mine now goes into my jugular. because it's much more long term,
Okay.
and so, yeah, I mean, like I said, if it could happen, I'm like, really, I'll go in and the doctors are like, oh God, now what?
I mean, do you live by Murphy's Law or
Mhm.
what? I mean,
Yeah.
seriously,
Hmm. Yeah.
oh gosh.
But yeah, every time I'm just like, okay, well, now we fix this and then we go merrily along.
Right. Well, I want to talk about a little bit because I am totally with you on this when you mentioned that you
Hmm.
fired your
Hmm.
doctor. I actually was in the process of doing that with my first oncologist, but
Hmm.
she ended up retiring.
Hmm.
And it was funny because there were a lot of people that really
Hmm.
liked her. She had been in practice in the Denver metro area
Hmm.
for years,
Hmm.
but I just, I made it sort of clear to her that I
Hmm.
wasn't really thrilled about taking tamoxifen.
Hmm.
And, I've shared this before. I
Hmm.
couldn't take it. I did for
Right.
6 weeks. It was awful. I could
Hmm.
not take it. So luckily in the interim, I had been moved to a different oncologist
Hmm.
who I adore the ground that he
Hmm.
walks on. And he's like, that's fine. If you don't want to
Hmm.
take it, that's fine.
Hmm.
But you just have to come see me more often.
Right. Hmm.
So, and I think that's so incredibly important
Hmm.
is to have such a good relationship with your
Right.
doctor, especially when you're going through something like
Hmm. Oh yeah. My oncologist has a sign on her in every exam room
this. Mhm.
that says, if we did not answer every one of your questions, don't leave.
Oh God.
I tell people, and I learned this when I worked at the American Cancer Society, like we said, your brain goes,
Hmm.
and so make notes,
Hmm.
have your questions written down, take somebody with you. Now, unfortunately, because of COVID, that kind of has changed things. But if at all possible, take somebody with you.
Yeah.
If you go to the doctor and they say, hey, Michelle, you've got the flu, you get home and you go, now, when am I supposed to take that medicine?
Mhm.
But when they tell you that you have cancer, your brain just completely shuts off.
Yeah.
And so do all that. And, we've even told people, record it. And if the
Mhm.
doctor has a problem with that, then that's a totally different problem.
Exactly.
They
Exactly.
should be perfectly fine with you recording that conversation because it helps them too.
Absolutely. The funny thing is, my parents, I'll use my parents as an example.
Hmm.
My father right now is 87. My mom
Hmm.
is 80. I have three amazing brothers and two awesome
Hmm.
sister-in-laws down in the same area.
Hmm.
But every now and then they have to go to the doctor by themselves
Hmm.
or with each other. And they
Right.
don't always remember
Hmm.
everything.
Oh yeah.
All of my parents' doctors, my brother and I are listed for
Hmm.
medical for
Hmm.
them. But my mom will literally call me while she's in there and
I
hand
love it.
doctor
Hmm.
and he's like, hey Michelle, how's it
Hmm.
going? And then he fills me in,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
I think that is, you're right, that's so
Hmm.
vitally
Hmm.
important to be
Oh
able
yeah.
to either record or have
Hmm.
someone there that can
Hmm.
help you remember everything.
Yep.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so important. I know,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
my first oncologist who, she,
Hmm.
when we first went and met her, not great bedside manner. She was
Hmm.
very, clinical, told you everything you needed
Hmm.
to know, but it wasn't, it was straightforward and blunt and
Right.
brutally
Hmm.
honest. And she told me, she goes, well, just, you had 6 tumors and this one was this size and this and
And
that.
your brain, you just
Yeah.
you
And I'm like,
freaked out.
yeah, because I'm still recovering from the
Right.
bilateral mastectomy,
Hmm.
lymph nodes gone, breast
Hmm.
tissue gone. And she
Hmm.
goes, well, just so 1 centimeter of a cancer cell can, or 1 centimeter can contain a billion cancer cells.
Oh,
And I looked at her and I was like, I had
you
6.
just are totally freaked.
Yeah, I just sat there
Hmm.
and looked at, my eyes were just
Hmm.
wide open. And my husband he put his arm around me and leaned forward and goes, you're going to be talking to me going forward because you
Yeah,
just
you've
lost her.
now shut her
You
brain
just
off.
lost her. Yeah. So it's, I mean, having that backup, having
Hmm.
that support, or,
Hmm.
and you're right. If the doctor is not willing for you to
Hmm.
record it, or at least
Right.
call someone so that they
Hmm.
can be on
Hmm.
speakerphone and listen in,
Yep.
you don't need to be going to that.
Right. Oh yeah. And it's funny because among other things, now I've developed kidney problems. We have no idea if it's because of this or if I would have just had kidney problems. And there's a sign in my nephrologist's office that says, due to HIPAA regulations, you cannot record. And I thought, that doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right.
And so I actually looked it up,
Mm-hmm.
and it saes the exact opposite. Because you, as the patient,
Mm-hmm.
have the right to do that. Now, you know, what I mean, it's one of those things where you should be telling the doctor. I mean, you shouldn't be hiding it in your purse or your pocket or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it is 100% your right to be recording whatever it is. And and if they tell you no, then yeah, I mean, that is a red flag.
Yeah, I think so. Because for me, your health is first and foremost on their agenda for meeting with you.
Right.
So if that means you need to record the conversation because you unfortunately had to come to the appointment by yourself, I think that they would welcome that, so that, it's
you're not calling them back. You're not saying, hey, I didn't, I don't remember. Yeah.
Exactly. So no, I totally agree with you on that. Don't be afraid to fire your doctor.
Right. Oh yeah. Because like I've actually fired 3. I fired my first just general doctor. And then I fired my first breast surgeon. Wonderful woman. I mean, but she and I just did not click.
Yeah.
And I knew this was going to be a long-term type of relationship. And so I just, picked somebody else. I asked another doctor for a referral, and he said, well, here's who my wife went to. And I thought that's a pretty good referral. And then the first general surgeon that I had, because I did have to have 4 abdominal surgeries because of all of this. I mean, I'm now hollow. It's pretty funny. And you go look at it, goes, hey, I lost 70 pounds. I mean, this was, pretty entertaining. But he was very young, and there was a reason this man was a surgeon. First of all, he wanted that glory. And second, he was dealing mostly with people who were unconscious, and he had a horrible bedside manner, scared the bejesus out of me. I mean, at one point he said something to me, and we never could track what he said because my husband was there and my mom might've even been there. But something he said, I was scared to go to sleep. And because I didn't think I would wake up. And so I'm not, we never did know what he had said that did that. And so I did, I switched surgeon because I knew I was going to have more abdominal surgery, and switched to, that you talk about worshiping. Oh yeah. I mean, Dr. Odom is my general surgeon. And, I would walk on fire for him. But part of that too, is he is the one who said, my wife has breast cancer. So he got it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's really important. My first plastic surgeon was awesome. She was I really liked her. She cared. She, knew what she was doing. But once I had the implants in, my body was just rejecting them.
Right.
And slowly over time, over 3 years. And I went back to see her again, and she was saying, well, we can do some touch-up surgery. We can do this. I did not realize, and it wasn't the implants that I had, but it was in the family of the implants, that they had been recalled. And that they've got almost like this sort of sticky material on the outside, and they have a tendency to flip. And I had never had that happen to me, but I went and saw a different surgeon because my husband was like, you should not be in this much pain.
Right.
So I went and saw, again, we were referred to him by another doctor. She was a breast cancer survivor, and that's who she went to.
Yep.
And so I went and talked to him, and he's like, yeah, those have to come out. They have to come out. So, and within 2 months, they were gone.
Yeah.
So, and I can lift my arm now. People can't see this on audio, but I can I could not do this for 3 years.
Right. Oh yeah. And I chose not to have implants. And I did have a double. And part of that was because I didn't want to have to worry about the other one. And I didn't want to be lopsided. I was like, fine, just make them both go away. Yeah. And I chose not to have implants because every single person I talked to who had them had issues.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, as the poster child of having issues, we just weren't going to do it. And so I do have, I have prosthetic boobs. And it's so funny. I have several different types. I have the really fancy ones that the insurance company provided. And then I have knitted knockers, and they're actually the ones I prefer because they're soft, they're squishy. And, bringing humor into this, they're named. I mean, the ones from the insurance company are Thelma and Louise. The
Mhm.
ones that I love the most are Lucy and Ethel.
I love
And I don't, I usually do not have them on. It's the strap goes right over where my port is, and so that hurts.
yeah.
So it's only if I'm going out in public and I have to be fancy. I mean, I don't have them
Mhm.
on now. Um, it's just like whatever,
Yeah.
one less thing to be worrying about.
I know. And, I actually met the woman from Knitted Knockers here locally in
Hmm.
Denver. And I did not realize that in every state, they
Hmm.
can have a little bit of a variation on the name. So
Yep.
here in Colorado, they go with Great Knockers.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, but they're an offshoot of
Yeah.
Knitted Knockers. So
Hmm.
yeah,
And
they're
they
actually
are knitted with
knockers.
stuffing in
Yeah.
them. I mean, it's as simple as that.
I love it. And she's going to be a guest
Oh,
on a
lovely.
podcast
I
coming up
love that.
soon.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have
Hmm.
her. But yeah, it's just, I think that, you take a step back and you have to do what's right for you.
Hmm.
If
Yep.
you didn't want to do
Yeah. I mean, you might
nothing,
say,
fine.
I'm not doing anything.
Yeah,
Okay. That's your decision and your right to make.
right.
Or you might say, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do chemo.
Hmm.
I mean, all those various things. I mean, it is your decision but you need to be comfortable with it. I mean, that
Yes.
is the other thing. It's not, oh, gee, I'm going to do this for a while and see how it works. That may or may not work.
Mhm.
But yeah. And it's part of the problem is there's so much information.
Yeah.
And so I relied on Mayo Clinic and the American Cancer Society. I mean, those are the only two places I get my information from. Well-meaning friends are always sending lots of great information, and I thank them profusely, but I never read it because
Yeah.
it's going to scare me.
Right.
And so yeah, I go to it's just like any news. You got to get your news from a trusted source.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you.
Mhm.
That's one thing. I've developed a really good relationship with the local chapter of the
Mhm.
American Cancer
Mhm.
Society here in Colorado, and definitely want to bring them on
Mhm.
as contributors because
That's where I used to work.
yeah, I don't want, I want my goal with the
Mhm.
podcast and with the Boob Report
Mhm.
website is I want women to be empowered with
Mhm.
knowledge that's
Yes.
based on data
Mhm.
and fact.
Mhm.
And then they can make their decision for their
Mhm.
treatment
Yep.
along with their
Mhm.
doctor going forward.
Mhm. Right.
So,
And it's one of those times where you also feel very alone.
mhm,
And so knowing that there are other people out there that have been through it, even though it's different for every single person. And that's one of the things I tell people is, you're going to get different reactions to chemo. You're going to, all these various things. So there's never, there's not a book that
yeah,
says you will do this and this and this. But it is about knowing it is, a sisterhood. And, there's some dudes in there, but for the most part, it is a sisterhood.
yeah. Well, it's, you're losing a part of your femininity.
Mhm.
I posted
Mhm.
about that on Facebook
Mhm.
the other day. I was at my 5-year mark of
Mhm.
getting having
Mhm.
my bilateral
Yep.
mastectomy.
Mhm.
And honestly, I had never spent the night in a hospital. I had
Mhm.
never had surgery. I was 49 years old.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, bam,
Yeah.
I'm just
The
having,
world came crashing down.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So and that's my mantra here. Every
Mhm.
woman's journey is different,
Mhm.
but you don't have to go on it alone.
Right. Mhm.
You don't.
Yeah.
So,
And I love that that's what you do because it is a great source of inspiration and knowledge and things like that. And it's such a wonderful service that you provide.
well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Well, this has been amazing. I'm see, it's so funny when I tell people we're going to be on a podcast. Oh, I don't know if I can talk that long. Really?
Oh, I don't
Really?
have that problem.
I'm like, you have no idea how quickly time flies when you
Mhm.
just, and that's why I love this because like we were talking before we came on,
Mhm.
I don't script it. I don't have
No.
questions.
Mhm.
We pop in the green room, quote unquote
Mhm.
green room, chat for a few minutes, and then
Mhm.
we just hop on board.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I love about it.
Mhm.
Well, Deb, thank you so much for sharing your story
Well,
with us.
thank you I'm very honored that I was asked to be part of your program.
Well, we are just so excited. And like I said, you and I obviously have this connection. My cancer was on my left side as
Mhm.
well.
So
So
what
that's,
is it with the left side?
I
Yeah, I
don't
don't.
know. I don't know. And
Mhm.
the funny thing is, and I was telling a woman this the other day, and I'll share, I don't care. My left boob was my favorite boob. It looked perfect.
Mhm.
It was perfectly shaped and everything.
Mhm.
And I was like, really?
Mhm.
So yeah, I was
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
frustrating. But you know what? It's all good. I'm
Mhm.
upright, breathing, living
Yeah. I
life.
mean, we take it and we grow and we go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have tattoos. I don't see. For those who can't
Yes.
see,
Yes.
I have a tattoo that says warrior, and
Right.
it's actually where I can see it when I am at the doctor.
Oh, I love
And and so I can be, and there, I'll reach down and be holding it,
it.
sometimes.
Yeah. I actually, when I got my tattoo, it's an anklet tattoo with charms on it. And so it's for my family,
Right.
and, my kids and of course, my fur babies. And then of course, you've got the little pink, breast cancer ribbon on it. But it was so funny when I went to the tattoo parlor to get it, there's all these guys, they're just tatted
I
up.
know. They're like
body art everywhere. And one of them came up to me. He wasn't the one that was doing the tattoo. He came up to me and he goes, "Are you the one with the ankle bracelet with the charms?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That is effing awesome."
I love it.
I was like, "Well, thank you. I feel good about it myself too." So yeah, that's my goal, is to just add little charms to it, as I go forward. So
oh yeah, and you're going to be adding charms for years.
yes. That's what we're hoping. So yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us today. We are so excited to have you, and I'm sure we'll circle back around.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm more than happy for, anybody who is listening or watching, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. It's pretty easy to find me on the internet.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll have all the information to contact you when we post on the website. So yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Absolutely, my dear. Such a great and informational time with Deb. She is a total rock star, you guys. We have links and information where you can learn more about her on our website at www.theboobreport.com/podcast, episode 18 in our show notes. And a very big thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to like and follow us, and definitely share the podcast with your friends. You can become an active listener and support this podcast by clicking on the podcast link on our website at theboobreport.com. Thanks, guys. Take care.